Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live. Um, let's just get some housekeeping things out of the way. This is via StreamYard. So, if you want us to be able to see your name, you're going to have to give StreamYard permission for commenting. It's okay. If you don't want to give your name, not a problem. We'll see the comments, but we just won't know who they're from. Secondly, this has been broadcasted to a number of different platforms. So if somebody could just put a comment so we know that you can hear me okay, see me okay, um, that'll be great. Okay, I can see people signing in now. So without further ado, let's get going. As you know, back end of July, I think it was July the 28th, I had an amazing panel of leaders within the staffing industry join me for a really insightful session on what the pandemic has done and looking forward. And we actually literally ran out of time. So everybody kindly agreed to come back on a one-on-one and allow us the opportunity to discuss things in more detail. So without further ado, I am super proud and excited to announce that I have Craig Brown, CEO of Agilus Work Solutions, with me today. Craig, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me, Suki.
You're welcome. For those viewers that may have missed last one or they don't know you, just want to take a quick minute and just introduce yourself and the company for everybody.
Sure. I am the CEO of Agilus and sitting in a beautiful office that we have here in downtown Mississauga area. And we are the sixth largest staffing organization in Canada, the largest Canadian-owned full-service recruitment company. And we have locations across our beautiful country from Victoria to Halifax, and we service pretty much all skill sets. So I'm happy to be here, and I had to double check to make sure I didn't have the same shirt on that I had last time 2 months ago.
It's funny because I done the same this morning, right? So, okay, let's dive straight in with the questions, right? These are pretty much follow ups from last time and some questions that came in afterwards. So, the first one I'm going to fire at you is one of the challenges facing recruitment firms we mentioned in our panel discussion last month was a shortage of candidates. Is this still impacting businesses to the same degree?
Yeah. No, good question. I think it's a hot topic for all of us in the staffing industry. So absolutely, it's having a huge impact on business still in the job market. Some industries impacted obviously more than others, especially hospitality, retail, food service. I'm not sure if you've been in a restaurant recently, but absolutely lots of need for candidates and work there. And a lot of us on this call manage contingent workforce as well for various clients and employers. And yes, there's a shortage of candidates out there. So I'm not sure when it's going to end, but there's really kind of two main issues. I think there's sort of a supply issue. There aren't enough candidates available, especially hourly candidates, to be able to go to work. And it's really impacted those hourly workers, especially through the pandemic. And the second is a bit of a mindset shift. We spoke about it a little bit last time in terms of, what do I like? What do I not like? What's important to me? There's been a lot of time to reflect on personal and professional things over the pandemic. The last 18 months, it's been 18 months, which is amazing, more than 18 months. And that thinking and sort of new mindset, I think candidates are reassessing what's important. They're reassessing their thinking and what their career should look like, and really taking a better outcomes view for themselves. And that's causing a little bit of shortage. They've been able to find ways to do other things through the pandemic as well, whether that's side hustles or some gig work or maybe some learning or education pieces to kind of help them do things they might want to do in the future. And a lot of them have realized they don't want to do what they used to do, which is, a new thing that really has been accelerated or amplified from the pandemic. And of course, in Canada specifically, we've had some additional benefits, of course, which have been needed through the pandemic, but also causing, allowing candidates or employees to sit on the sidelines and really assess and rethink what they're going to do before they get back into the workforce. So there's still that population of candidates right now on the sidelines, looking to see when they want to get back in, jump back in, and actually what work they want to do with that. So we'll see some easing of that with some of the the benefits relaxing and changing, which they've already started to do through the end of October here. But there's a lot of things going on. But it doesn't just apply to hourly workers as well. It applies a little bit to everybody. And I think we haven't really seen the full effect of that yet. So the fourth wave we're seeing, especially, is different in a lot of the provinces in Canada, but it's delaying a lot of employers' return to office strategies and plans. And I think there's a bit of a wait and see on the employee side in those skill sets that are more able to work remotely and are working from home right now, to see what it feels like, or it will be like, to be back in the office and kind of have a hybrid work schedule or a back in the office work schedule, and see how that goes. So I think there's, that great resignation or the great attrition or the great reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's just, maybe right now in Canada anyways, it's maybe just a higher than normal resignation phase in Canada. And I don't think we've seen the full impact of what the great resignation might be. And it's going to be interesting, right? Because even you think the CEO of Microsoft, he kind of puts it, in a neat way. I think there's that hybrid paradox that I think a lot of, work from home candidates are waiting to see. Is you miss things about the office. You like being in the office, but you're now scared of losing, the flexibility of remote work, right? You're scared of it too. So it's going to be a very interesting thing. And then on top of all of that, so hourly and mindset and, subsidies and everything else that, that kind of, creating these candidate challenges and shortages. There's also some other, the pandemic has created some pressure on, demographically as well. So if you think about boomers, many boomers have retired. So skilled professionals, leaving the workforce through the pandemic because it was just the right timing to do so. Maybe they had a house and sold it and moved to a different area of Canada or other countries. And it's also impacted women quite a bit. So a lot of women have left the workforce. If you look at any of the Statistics Canada information, because of course especially women with children, the unpredictableness, or parents as a whole, I guess, but the unpredictableness of school and childcare through the 18 months has just made it easier or the right decision for them to exit the workforce and take care of their family. So that, and then immigration's been lower than it has in Canada. Canada is a large immigration country, and immigration slowed through the pandemic as well. So you have the mindset piece, you have sort of the hourly impact part of it, you have the subsidy piece for employees, and then you've got sort of these demographic shifts. So all in all, it really creates pressure on the candidate side or the employee side for all of us, both internally and externally, through these times right now. So we spend a lot of time coaching our clients and our candidates on retention and attraction. And we speak a lot about great attrition or great resignation. There probably has to be great attraction because the candidates do go somewhere, right? So we're helping our candidates thinking about that in terms of what the great attraction might be for them. And we actually call it retention 911 and attraction 411. So that's kind of how we're speaking to our clients in Canada about it, because employers need to create engaging environments, where candidates can relate to their mission, to really be able to find that talent right now.
Do you think employers really truly understand the extent of the situation, and are they doing enough, do you think?
I think they are. I think it's been evident, especially the last 6 months or so, as the economy's loosened up and there's more capacity for work to be done in the system. I think employers are, hyper aware of it. They're not thinking broadly enough about what it means to attract the right talent or even retain the talent they have internally. And I think there's work to be done on sort of the how part of it. But I think it's pretty clear for all of us that, it's a real thing, and it's, we need to do something about it.
And I want to add, money's not necessarily the right solution. I'm
No.
certainly hearing a lot of companies, and we're seeing it in our industry as well, just throwing money at the problem. And I don't know what you feel on that. In some cases, yes, that is going to help, especially if somebody is below market value and things like that, right? And but this whole idea of just giving people pay rises in order to retain them, and I'm talking ridiculous pay rises. We're seeing some crazy numbers. But I always say, especially in sales, the expectation goes up as well, right? So salary goes up and then the expectation is going to go up alongside that. Do you think we're going to, what's the word I want to use? Do you think this bubble is going to burst? This just keep giving more money.
Yeah. I think that's a short-term fix or sort of a band-aid, really, right? So that that typically bursts, and I think back to 2007, peak staffing market. I think in 2007, the good old times, right, where the economy was really humming, as well as demand for our services on the staffing side, and lots of opportunity for employees and candidates to find the work that they want to do. And the difference here is, businesses are still working through their post-pandemic recovery, right? So the economy is not really humming yet. It's improving, but not humming yet. And, there's lots of uncertainty and caution out there. So, it really is a short-term solution. And I think employers need to think a little bit, broader again. And any research I've read, and I'm sure everybody in the audience has read, the wage piece, or and again, everybody deserves the fair wage for the work you're doing in the market you live in. Like, as you mentioned, Suki, that's absolutely the right thing. But sort of crazy signing bonuses, or huge, counter offers to increase salaries beyond normal for that role in that market, it's a slippery slope. And even in the research, it shows that it really comes down to value. Being valued is most important, right? So you can throw a lot of money a lot of problems, but it doesn't fix the problem. And 3 months or 6 months later, you have a different problem. Either you can't afford what you've done, and there's another decision you have to make, or you've created instability with your current team, who you should be valuing and retaining, because they're the ones that are helping you, achieve the success that the organization is having. So I think it's something employers need to rethink a little bit, right? So maybe more focus sort of on the culture piece of it, as it relates to the value and belonging, success, and what works for your organization long term is really where we should be shifting to.
Yeah, and I would also add, from a candidate perspective, that's something they also need to be mindful of. Again, you and I both very clear, your market value. But when, like, again, I'm going to stick to our industry. I'm hearing of emails going around just as an attraction, 30% pay raise. Nothing to do with ability, skill. Talk to us, minimum 30% pay raise. So from a candidate perspective, and when candidates tell me that story, I always go back and say, but be careful. If someone's only attraction, the only way they can get you on board is literally by throwing money at the solution, that speaks to their mindset as well, right? So from a candidate point of view, I just want to get that in there. Um, Sometimes if it looks too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, right? Um,
I just wrote that down. I was going to say the same thing.
um, but it's so important, because ultimately, to your, just tie it back to your point earlier, those ones that are throwing money at the problem, they're creating a problem for tomorrow. And when all of those problems, and it's beyond the scope of today, but when all those problems come up, first thing they're going to do is cost cut. Right. First thing they're going to do is cost cut back into profitability. And you and I both know, we all know that's not the right way to do it. Okay, moving on, because I'm very conscious of time today.
Can I just add one more thing, Suki? Because
Sure.
I think it's important. So even from the candidate side, that values piece is important too, right? So, are there shared values for myself with the organization? And, and how do they kind of, engage that value to the employee as well, right? So what do they do organizationally from a culture standpoint, to connect and create that value connection to the organization?
Yeah, that's so important, especially now, depending where you are in the world. You may still be in lockdown, you may be hybrid. So it's even more important, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so let me ask you another question. Do you think there is a silver lining to this talent squeeze?
I do. I really do. And I think it's kind of comes down to one word, when I think about it. And that's the word awareness, right? It's been so much awareness on both the employee and the employer side through the pandemic, that I think it's fantastic, right? So awareness leads to action. Generally, action, leads to choice, and choice leads to change. And I know last time I was here, change is scary because we've undergone a lot of change over the last couple of years. But when you have increased awareness, change is less scary. And you're better able to kind of link the change to better outcomes for both you as an individual, but as well as the organization. So I think awareness is the absolute silver lining through the talent squeeze, the pandemic, and the talent squeeze that we're in right now. And there's two kind of themes from that awareness, right? One is the awareness of flexibility and how important it is, both for employers and for employees. And the second, from my opinion, is sort of more awareness around mental health, right? The pandemic has really impacted all of us differently. There's never been so many different variables affecting individuals, over the last 18 months. And I think those two things really have come top of mind through the talent squeeze and the pandemic. And for employees or candidates, or whatever word, we all use different words, I guess, for that side of the industry. But that increased awareness over professional values, what I like, what I don't like. As I've said it a few times, I said it last time, I think there's been more work plus life acknowledgement, awareness, understanding, that's really helping employees decide what they want to do work-wise, right? Which is good. So when candidates actually want to, when candidates are engaged because it links to what they want to do, what their skills they have, what they like to do, not only from skill sets and reward standpoint, but also just work plus life and balance. And I want to be here and I want to be there and I want to do this, and this, that's really important. So that's really helping, I think, on the employee and the candidate side, which of course causes talent shortages for all of us who are helping, connect employers and candidates. But in the employer side, I think there's a lot of great things from it too, in terms of flexibility too, right? So, and I think there's two views on the employer side. There's kind of a demographics view, and then there's a skill set view. And I think the awareness is creating, and there's sort of offshoots through the pandemic too that were highlighted awareness-wise, like diversity. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us as employers to really foster greater workforce diversity, which is, again, in most studies, are proved that organizations with greater diversity have better results, from the business side of the equation, more collaborative, more productive teams, a workplace more aligned to their customers. So there's a great value in diversity. So we're spending a lot of time helping our clients sort of make that shift to a more diverse workforce, where there's, and we're seeing more Indigenous peoples, BIPOC, transgendered, neurodiverse candidates, having more interviews and getting more opportunity through the talent squeeze too, which I think is great for everyone, and sort of a silver lining of the pandemic. And then technology, and in that too, something we always forget about, ironically, technology helps us be more human sometimes, right? So you don't necessarily think that, but technology can make you be, is actually makes things more human because there's increased accessibility. It's easier to do things. I can navigate things more simply, which is very human. So one of the things we've done sort of on, the diversity side is we've created, we've automated our job posting process. So we use technology to automate job posting process, but we also did training through that, to create processes for more inclusive and gender neutral language in our job postings, which we were kind of unaware of before, right? It wasn't sort of top of mind for us, something that we have learned as Agilus through the pandemic as well. So we've done that in the last 6 months. So there's that whole sort of diversity and demographics piece that I think employers, a silver lining for employers to really access pools of candidates, especially because it's a talent squeeze, think a little bit differently about their roles and who they need in their organizations. But also from a skill set standpoint, I think this is really, really important. What skills do I really need? Right? As an employer, what skills do I really need to generate the outcomes? And that could be a role, that could be a team, that could be a business unit, that could be the entire organization. But what do I need and where do I find those skills to maximize the efforts of the business? So there's a real shift I think, starting from credentials to outcomes, right? So instead of looking at the credentials I have, I'm looking at the outcomes I need, and I'm trying to put those two pieces together. And I think that is great. So clients are a little bit more open. We're finding, to non-traditional candidates, not a direct match to previous roles and titles that they've used before. And I think that silver lining is great news for everybody in the market, especially in a talent squeeze, but for the future when things are a bit more balanced as well.
Yeah, I was reading a great article yesterday, and I'll share it in the comments later, about the importance of relationships collaboration. But this particular article was talking around the mental health and employees and peer to peer, right? People
Yeah.
opening up, companies fostering an environment where individuals, peers are talking to each other and sharing what's not working, what's really going on. Because if you think about it, and I'm showing my age here, for decades, it's been you put that happy face on, that mask, right? It doesn't matter whether your world's falling apart outside of work. When you're at work, it's this macho, and you gotta always be smiling and be happy. Now, and this article, as I said, I will tag it. It was talking about the importance of actually creating an environment where your employees are actually being heard and they're talking to each other. So they're supporting each other.
100%. And sort of our mantra through the last 18 and a bit months has been take care of yourself, take care of each other.
Hmm.
And so we've tried hard to do that, and just will continue to get better at it. But even sort of, Canada's a big country, and we have branches across the country, and even if we had small little teams, working well together in a market, they didn't have a lot of interaction with a province or 3 time zones away here. So the teams and the video piece, the technology component that we've embraced through the last 18 months has really helped us be able to have those connections across teams. And we do, one of the things that we have internally is sort of every couple of weeks I have, we call it coffee with Craig, but it's a diverse group of internal colleagues across the country. We get together and we just talk about whatever everybody wants to talk about. And typically they're individuals on our team who have never met each other before. So we have been trying a lot of things to really have those connections, because everybody's had different personal circumstances through this, and we're trying to keep as connected as possible.
What I will say before I move on to the next question, I love that, because when people see it, this comes top down, right? So when they see individuals like yourself and your peers and colleagues, and they're sitting there saying, right, I'm listening, I'm sharing, I'm here, that's when you're going to get the others to really open up and do it, right? So that's brilliant. So moving on, eventually we will move beyond COVID and the talent shortage. What do you think the future of work will look like?
Ooh, that's a big question. That's a big question. So we've thought a lot about this, and Agilus has published some white papers out there that everyone can access or take a look at through our website. I did speak on this topic too at the National HRPA conference earlier this year as well. We kind of call it the boundless workforce is kind of where we're going, right? So, a fluid global workforce that responds to the needs of business. And I think part of that is candidate empowerment or candidate power, however you want to frame it. Candidates will have increasing power over their destiny in the future. And sort of in the boundless workforce that we kind of think about, candidates really manage their own time, their resources, their productivity, and then the employers manage the outcomes, right? So it's kind of a balance of things on the candidate and client side, and both of those have greater flexibility in it as well. So it kind of looks, from our view, like a gig economy or a shared economy. But for that to work well, the government's also going to have to get involved to ensure workers are protected. And when we say gig, it's not necessarily gig as an hourly or transaction, but just variety and flexibility in the structure or the relationship an employee has with an employer to create flexibility for both sides. That's really what it is. So even if you take me for an example in the boundless workforce, or even today, my main gig is the CEO of Agilus Work Solutions, but I also serve on a couple of advisory boards. I also do speaking engagements, which are gigs as well, right? So it's sort of, the new way of thinking is sort of, is multiple gigs in a boundless workforce as well. And so for me, I own my skills, my professional development, my time, and my employer owns my outcomes, right? So I deliver outcomes, which is a growing, functioning, well-respected, run staffing organization, right? So in the gig economy, the gig is a scary word for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, all the work we do is a gig, right? Everything. So I think it's gotten a bit of a bad rap, and it's been synonymous with temporary work or part-time work with no benefits or job security. But for us, boundless means flexibility that benefits both sides, right? So that's kind of what the boundless looks like. And there's a technology piece to the future of work too that I think is really crucial. Is there's going to be increasing use of technology to make it easier to work together, right? So the prevalence of digital platforms to enhance connections of employees and employers will continue to increase more and more in the future. And again, all of that gives power to the candidates to pick and choose what they want to do. It gives power and flexibility to the employers to engage talent for the outcomes they're looking for. And both of those things really, really should benefit both sides and make everybody more, increase productivity of the workforce, of economies, and really increase, well-being. I think is part of that too. Increase well-being for everybody as well. In the pandemic, if anything, has really accelerated this. I think it's a lifetime event. It's created a bit of a work revolution, or call it an evolution, or call it whatever you want. If electricity created the industrial revolution and the internet created the digital revolution, the pandemic certainly has created a work revolution, if not an evolution, right? And we're at the very beginning of that. But I think ultimately that boundless workforce, the flexibility for talent, the flexibility for employers, is going to improve how everyone lives and gets work done.
Yeah, no, totally. I love all of that. Something you said earlier on that I made a note of. You're talking about the government, the government's got its role to play. Um, I just want to come back to that because, yes, there are certain things that only the government can do. But as employers ourselves, it's better if we kind of do a lot of this ourselves rather than have it's like everything else, right? You don't want the government in your business. You want them as far away as you possibly can. But I think it's really important for us as employers to own that and start doing the right thing, putting and making sure that it doesn't get and then if it is the government, because here in Canada there's been so many changes just from the staffing perspective, right? I think it's really important that as an industry, we actually get involved with that conversation as well, rather than just allowing government to just go ahead and legislate. We got to have a voice. And that I'm talking our industry, right? It applies to every industry. So I think that's really important as well.
I agree. And I think as an industry, we're not always the best at advocating for the important role that we play in the economy, right? I think that's something we need to be better at as an industry. So absolutely having a seat at the table with the government to help make better decisions, to help with flexibility for employees and employers for each side to be successful is really, really important. And I think you triggered another thought for me, Suki, too, is just even our role as staffing. I would think most of our audience is in the staffing industry today. And so you think about our contingent workforce, for those of us that manage contingent workforce, that retention attraction piece, the retention 911, the attraction 411 piece are really important for your external workforce too, your contingent workforce too, right? So how do you engage that community? How do you keep them working? How do you make sure you have opportunity available for them so that they can rely on you for consistent and great opportunities? We definitely have our role to play in the staffing industry specifically to do that too. Better work community building, I guess, would be an easy way to say that on our side.
Yeah, and you've just triggered a thought in my mind with your response. I think also we're talking about just as general the recruitment industry, we play a phenomenal role. And you're right, we often don't advocate enough for what we do and things like that and the contribution we make. But on the flip side of that, what I do want to just touch on is we have a responsibility as an industry to ensure, and I'm going to keep this really, really simple, that we're getting the best possible competitive pay rate salary for our candidates, right? So that means also educating those employers, but also being confident as an industry to say, okay, we're not working with you. We're not
Yeah.
representing you. Because when, as an industry, enough of us are saying that, that's when they're going to start listening. So I think as an industry, every industry has its cowboys, right? They're not the people I'm talking to. They're probably not even watching this. But I think as an industry that we have our side to advocate, elevate the reputation, branding, government, and everything. But I think we also have to have a voice and educate our clients that no, yes, co- um, it's a great way to bring in and manage a contingent workforce and things like that, but not at the cost of the employees' pay rates, right? Not at the cost of us as an industry being able to make profit, right? Every industry, every single business, other not for profit, is out there to make profit, and we are the same. So I think I just want to get that in there that as an industry, we got to walk away from those kind of clients that just want to squeeze margins so tight that we're unable to deliver a great service to them and the client. We've got to be willing to walk away from that.
Yeah, maybe to put it simply, we should always make sure we're doing a great job with employers of making sure work done is matched. Work done matches fair market rate, not work status. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I could go on forever on that one, so I won't. Okay. So Carl says, I'd love to hear Craig Brown's view on recruiting international candidates who fall in the skill shortage category in Canada.
Well, I probably can't speak in too much detail to that. I do think Canada should be promoting immigration and bringing talent into the country, and getting back to a leader in that regard globally. We have lots of opportunity. We have lots of needs. We have some progressive employers in the country needing talent to do great things to help Canada grow. I think we should be doing much more. It's still a pandemic, so we have to get through the pandemic. But I do think that immigration part of the equation is critical to Canada's future success, and employers wanting to be here, because employers coming into Canada or growing in Canada need access to that talent.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, because we've just started working with an international company and they've decided that their North American office is here in Toronto. Right. So people are absolutely looking at Canada, and you're right, the country is built on immigration, right?
Mhm.
So post pandemic, the doors are going to open up again.
And they need to, for sure.
Yeah, they need to 100%. So moving on, what is the benefits of a boundless workforce to employees and employers?
Yeah. So, just kind of a summary, I guess, of that boundless workforce. If you think about the benefits of it from an employer point of view, a diverse workforce, more diverse skill sets, easier to manage the bottom line, which is important for a business to be able to do. Access to a global community, just like the question we had. There's some, if someone can be fully remote, they don't necessarily have to be in Canada today. So, that will increase in the future. You can leverage market trends and skill set pockets that might not be in your backyard, I think is really important. And you can really invest in talent rather than capital, right? So that, that's a new thing I think that companies are rethinking for the future is, how do we spend more on talent than infrastructure to generate the outcomes that we're looking for as a business? And again, that outcome thinking, right? I think a lot of businesses now are realizing that we should be thinking about outcomes and less about what we used to do and what needs to go into that equation to create the outcomes that we need. From a candidate side or an employee side, I think the flexibility to manage their workflow, to manage their workload, to work when and where they want to work, I think is going to be a part of the boundless future. Diversity in tasks and work as well, so they can pick and choose different things to do based on what the skills they have and what they're interested in doing. I think this will increase market rates, right? Just so the need that if you need to procure or hire or retain these pieces to get outcomes, well, the market rate for that work is this. So it should elevate wages, I think, in a boundless workforce. Allows the candidates to build their own network, so they always kind of control their own destiny, have more power in what they're wanting to do. And I think that learning piece, which is becoming more and more prevalent, working with, we've been successful in bringing sort of an intern program that we kicked off, and I love it. So we have some new Agilus colleagues who are young and hungry and bright, and they're learning and they ask great questions and they're very insightful, right? So it's just sort of, I think the younger generations coming into the workforce are much more interested in learning and impact than I was at that age, for sure. And I think that continuous learning piece is really fundamental and great for everyone on the candidate side and for the employer side in a boundless workforce as well.
Yeah, the other piece I totally agree with everything you're saying, and tying back into we need immigration. I think one of the things that here in Canada, and to be honest, it's true everywhere, is we got to stop looking for Canadian experience, because there is talent out there. But and I don't know where that comes from. But one of the things we hear over and over again is, yeah, great candidate, but we need them to have Canadian experience. And no one's going to get Canadian experience until somebody gives them the opportunity. So I think just from a mindset thing, we've got to question that now. Like we should have been questioning it before, but more so now, is why do we say that? Why must they have Canadian experience, right? And I think it just boils down to people feeling, how do I want to say this? They want people that look, talk, act like them, right? So I think that's, without going into that rabbit hole, that may, I think that may be where some of that stems from. But ultimately, we've 100% got to start looking at the talent that is already here and saying, can they do the job? Just because they look, I've got an accent. Everybody has an accent, right? So if we're gonna, yes, we need new immigration, but I think we still have a talent pool here that potentially can still be tapped into, right?
I agree, and I do think that's starting to shift a little bit already, which is great, right? So kind of that flexibility piece and sort of a talent squeeze, that's another silver lining of that, right? Is who can do it, and that so that comes to mind. I think it is getting a little bit better. There's a bit more diversity, thinking on the employer side to like, what talent do we need for it? And I think employers generally, we're not always clear on the outcome we're looking for, right? So with the increased clarity on outcomes for businesses, especially when they've been lean, especially when they can't maybe find the talent they used to have now, I do think that is accelerating some better thinking along the lines of diversity and accessing talent pools wherever they are, and relying less on credentials.
Yep.
You've worked in Canada for 5 years, and more on outcomes and skills. So I do think we're at the very beginning of that becoming better and better.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, depending on what sector you're in and things like that, the candidate pool you're dealing with may not be Canadian, they may be immigrants themselves, right? So that's where that relevance is. Now, I'm glad to hear that you're seeing that it's slightly beginning to shift,
Yeah.
because it is so important, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a talent shortage and we have a talent pool that is already here, and we need to give them the so-called Canadian experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Do you see a role for recruitment firms in this new way of working? And what should staffing organizations be thinking about going into 2022?
All right, that's a fun one. I think the good news is recruitment firms are here to stay. We play, for all of us on the call, we play a critical role in the future, right? So you think about organizations, and especially as employers look to spend more on talent and less on infrastructure, talent's the number one driver of organizational success. So in the future, especially when there's more flexibility, our role becomes even more impactful in connecting talent and employers. So I think that's the good news. So that the death of the recruitment firm, is very premature. I think it's safe to say that. And ironically, in our industry, many new companies are entering our space, right, from other segments. So
Yep.
we have technology companies coming into our space. We have consulting companies coming into our space, right? And then we have us trying to get a piece of the staffing and the tech side of things too. So talent is necessary for everything to work. I think the future of recruitment and staffing industry has never been more secure. But there is caution, right? So there will be consolidation. The traditional staffing firms need to evolve and make sure they're candidate friendly. They have structure and processes in place to connect with the candidate side, and they need technology in place now too. Again, it's always funny to think, but technology is human, is part of the human experience right now. So anything that makes it easier and more simple for me to do something is important to me in this day and age, and that will only continue going forward. So so we have a role to play. So if you think about it, even just thinking about a boundless workforce, employers and clients are going to need help in navigating skills and candidates, right? They're going to need our help and support in assessing skills versus credentials. And what does that mean for me? So these are the outcomes I'm looking for. Can you help us build a skill set that allows us to drive those outcomes for the role or the team or the business unit or for the company? So what you can do will be more important than your credentials, which is great, but employers will need our support in navigating that and managing that and helping on the candidate side of assessing the candidate talent and skills and experience that they do have. We're also going to have an opportunity to continue to leverage technology and AI. And again, that really goes to work plus life and simplicity and ease of use. And I think staffing industry and us as recruiting organizations have a big role to play in that. What technology actually makes a candidate's life easier? What technology might help an employer's life easier in assessing skills, for example. So I think there'll be a lot of movement and a lot of opportunity for us as staffing companies to play in that space as well. And also, if we are moving to more flexibility in the future, and candidates are demanding it, employees want it, recruitment firms, staffing firms have a role to play in managing, what roles should be full-time equivalents, which ones should be, outsourced projects, which ones should be, part-time, which ones should be casual work, which ones, so organizational design, I think, will be part of a staffing future, which is exciting, right? Because we play a role to play in connecting, talent and employers. And then we think about, the younger generations, as I mentioned earlier, with our intern programs that we launched earlier this year. That values piece is very important to them, right? So do I share the values of the organization? The purpose, do I get what they're trying to do? Am I excited by what they're trying to do? Can I have an impact on what they're trying to do? What value or contribution can I make? And what are they going to teach me? So I have new skills to learn. So, from a candidate perspective, recruitment firms really have an opportunity to help candidates articulate those things to employers, right? So being that ambassador and advocate for the candidate side of our business, I think we're going to have more candidate relationship building to do, which is great because if you have technology taking care of automated process pieces and recruiters have more time to spend with candidates to really understand and get to know them from a work plus life perspective, it only creates better matches and better outcomes for everybody. So I think we have a ton of great things, for our industry in the future, but we do need to evolve and kind of move with the times.
Oh, so Lisa says working from home, some people are loving it, others are not so much. Recently spoke with someone who feels once people can be back in the office, if they can choose not to come and their jobs can be done remotely, the salary should be impacted negatively because it's considered a benefit. This is a great question, Lisa, because right now this is a real issue for a lot of companies because they've still got, like I was in your Mississauga office last week, Craig.
Yeah.
What a beautiful office. Everything you've done for that, and the way it's laid out, and employee friendly, and just in particular that entertainment area that you've got. Um, but you were saying you've not been able to use it,
Mm-mm.
right? You've not been able to use it because people haven't come into the office. So one of the questions, the conversations I'm having with clients and candidates at the moment is, if people want to work from home, should that be a lower salary? Because when, certainly I'll talk for my team, when my team's salaries were, I offered the salaries, I knew commuting into Toronto, the cost of commute was taken into account, and then you never bring in food, all that kind of stuff, right? So that was part of the salary. Um, Now, if someone's working from home, should that be taken away?
Yeah, so that's a good question, a sticky question,
It
and
is.
I'll call it the Facebook question, right? Because I think good old Mark was quick to say, if you live in Iowa, you're not getting paid like you do in San Francisco, right? So,
Yeah.
so we're thinking, we're thinking about our hybrid strategy of the future, the workplace strategy of the future, and so it's hard to take salary away from your team, right? So I think you have to shift the thinking more to value and outcomes. And I know I've said outcomes 100 times in this in this session, but it's absolutely true. And I think that's the shift that business is struggling with. Lisa, with that question is, what outcomes are needed to support that, and I don't think it's clear for everybody yet. So I think it's still a work in progress. I think there's going to be a whole, there's going to be some early movers and first adopters of hybrid workplace strategies and figuring out the best way to do it. And again, it's got to work for both sides. So it has to work for the candidates and it has to work for the employers, because there's going to be a lot of choice, especially on the candidate side. And I think it has to be based on the outcomes for your business and if it works for you. So, I don't think of wage or salary specifically. I think more of total rewards, I guess, right? So, what are the benefits? What are the wages? What's the variable? What other pieces of the business? What are the logistics and working at home and then going to the office a day or 2 or 3 a week, right? Like, so there's so many questions in that, Lisa, that I can't give you a specific answer. And I think it's going to be flexibility with employers, flexibility with candidates, and really geared to the outcomes of the business. And I think that's the hardest question for employers right now, right? So balancing, pandemic recovery financially with voluntary turnover increasing, with uncertainty in the pandemic still, and we spend a lot of time thinking about it, but don't have great clarity in the answers. But for us, it really is, how can we make sure we drive the outcomes that the business needs and the success of our colleagues? Those are the kind of the two, barometers we're using.
Yeah, because you've got to be, and you're right, it's really hard to balance that because many of us are locked into these 5-year leases, right? In your case, right across the country. And so it's not as if those costs have gone down. It's not as if magically overnight, now that we're not in the office, those costs have gone down. So companies are still having, and that's the only word of caution I would put out there is, yes, whilst every employer may want to do it, they may be in a financial position not to be, they may be in a financial position where they have no choice but to make that decision in order for the business and everybody else to have a job and to survive. But sorry, go on.
And I think, like the Microsoft CEO quote, I think when we all went home in March last year, we were scared of working from home. Right. So now it's been 18 months later, and now we're scared of going back potentially. And there really is benefits to both.
Yeah.
Because you don't get this, as much as, videos are great and it's easy to see everybody, it's still hard to pick up on, cues or, emotions or things that could help someone be more successful, or make them, make sure we're taking care of their well-being. It's in learning too. Learning is generally easier in person too. So I think what's going to happen is smart organizations will figure out the right hybrid balance and make sure that when you're in office, you're doing things that benefit being together in person, and you do things remote that are easy to do remote. And if you can figure that out, it's good for everybody. And I think that's where companies are gonna start playing with, and that how isn't clear yet, because we haven't been able to really be in office in Canada, effectively, in a lot of cases, in our case. So I think that's going to evolve a little bit over the next probably 6 months.
Yeah, you're right, because I was in, as you know, in Montreal. Oh, let me just take this question. Can salaries be based more on experience, outcome, success rates? Also, less time spent traveling to work often means more time working and more time outcomes when at home. Yeah, what do you think of that, Craig?
Can I see the question again, Chris? Is that possible? Thank you. Well, for sure. So that whole outcome piece, if you're more productive and have more outcomes, I think, there's different ways to look at that in terms of total rewards as well. So absolutely, I think that's part of it. I think the caution is, there's a lot of research and literature out there now that we may not be more productive at home. We actually work more hours. So productivity is up, but we're working more. So there, again, that slippery slope, and we're new into this new world of work right now. And so, actually, and I'll use Microsoft again, because they have a whole research team that actually digs into analytics in work. And they've been doing a lot of research on to work from home and remote work for their organization. And when they studied, they immediately realized productivity was up, outcomes were up, desired outcomes were up for the teams that they were analyzing. But when they actually dug into why, it was because they were working longer days than they were working in the office. So less commute,
Wow.
working longer days. So, it's an amazing topic, and we could spend a whole day speaking about it. But it's going to be a sort of a test and tweak piece of it. And I think employers are going to have to be, clear with their teams on sort of, the outcomes, so that the tests and the tweaking can actually take place to make sure it's good for everybody.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think you're going to have anyone's going to find a solution that is perfect for every single person, right?
Yeah.
So off the back of that, companies are going to have to make decisions for the overall good, and individuals are going to have to make decisions for themselves, quite rightly. And if that means parting ways, then there's no other option, right? Um, okay, so one thing I want to pick up on, just to go back to something I wrote down when I asked you the last question, you were talking about um, AI and automation and things like that. One of the things that I 100% agree with you, right? It's critical, it's part of the process, but we are still in the people business. And one of the dangers I see is people hiding behind automation email instead of picking up the phone, right? So the one that sprung to mind, I was reading on LinkedIn the other day, one of the large companies, when in their online application, when someone applies, they get the email going back as well. If you haven't heard from us in 14 days, um, you've not been successful, something to that effect. Now, what I do want to say is, yes, when you have thousands of people applying, nobody can sit there and go back to each individual person and say, sorry. I know people may think, Basuki, that literally takes a minute. It does, but it also stops that person from helping those people that they can hire and put through the process and things like that. But I want to just make sure, certainly we talk about this, stop behind where you need to pick up the phone, you got to pick up the phone, right? You've got to have that human contact. So AI is great,
Yeah.
but not at the expense of the human content, the human element of it.
Correct. And we view it specifically as, technology to automate processes to increase time to have connection with candidates and clients.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so like it's so critical, right? Because at the end of the day, the industry is here to stay. When job boards first came out in the UK, we were told we were going to be out of a job before we
Mhm.
knew it, right? And then the next thing came along, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and we're still here, just going stronger. And that talks about the importance that, that's testament to how important our industry is. But you've got to be able to flex with it,
For sure. For
right?
sure. Yeah.
I'm very, very mindful of time.
Yeah, and I have 4 takeaways, Suki, because I'm a big
Perfect.
fan of summarizing, if that's all right. So
That's
that,
exactly where I was going.
yeah, you would ask me to think a little bit about
Mm,
2022. Okay, I just want to I want to make sure, because when you asked me that question, like, what is 22? Some things to think about in the staffing industry for 2022. So I want to, share those. So number one is candidate focus, and I think even what we just talked about a second ago kind of applies to that too, right? So having conversations and connections with candidates is critical, right? So how do you connect? How do you retain? How do you diversify your work communities? Really important for us as staffing companies and recruitment companies. Number two, we've talked about it quite a bit today too, is relevant and maintainable attraction and retention programs. And I think the key word there is maintainable. So when we spoke a little bit ago about 30% wage increases to bring one person into an organization, that is not maintainable. I think that's a key word in retention and attraction programs is the word maintainable. And you have to figure out what works best for your teams, your culture as well, with all the crazy things. And I think a nice way to say it is consistency is way better than intensity when it comes to programs like that. And I try to apply that in my exercise routines as well, because I'm a weekend warrior, do a lot of stuff on Saturday and I can hardly walk on Monday, right? So consistency is always better than intensity when it comes to retention and attraction. And then leadership, which I think we don't talk a lot about, but it's paramount, I think, to think about leadership. It's changing. We connect on video, we have remote distributed teams. Leadership is changing. Less in person, face to face, to do those coaching conversations that are critical to success for everybody. So I think it's important as leaders that we lead with expectation and empathy. Those two things together, I think, will be important for us as staffing leaders going into 2022, because it's still going to be a bit of a bumpy ride going through into next year. And really thinking about performance as an outcome and supporting your team to get there. There's that word outcome again. I love that word. And then the last one would be technology, which again, we've spoken a lot about today, is really what technology can you put in place to make it easier for candidates and clients to work with you. That doesn't take the human part of it. It makes it easier. So let's spend more time on the real meaty things and less time on, did your paperwork get signed? Did they have the right email address, what have you? So, what better outcomes do you want and how does technology apply to it? So I think candidate communities, leadership, the retention and attraction programs that are consistent and maintainable, and technology are sort of 4 main things to really focus on going into the new year.
Perfect. And you know what? 2022 is going to be so much stronger than 2021. And 2021 has been strong. And I'm not just talking in my Canadian business. I've seen it in the US business, the UK, South Africa. It is things have turned a corner. They may not be in certain regions. They may not have turned as fast as you want them to turn. But the reality is, now everything you do now is going to be a phenomenal springboard for 2022. So we still got, I always look at a fiscal year, I look at the quarters as a mini fiscal year. So quarter four is just starting, right? So everything we do now has got to make sure as an industry we finish really strong for 2021, but we also create that amazing springboard to ensure we go into 2022 even stronger. And your takeaways are amazing, right? So, on that note, I am going to wrap things up because I promised you I wouldn't keep you longer than an hour. I know we can keep talking. Craig, thank you ever so much for taking time out again. I really, really appreciate it. If people want to reach out to you, you okay with that?
Absolutely. Can connect on LinkedIn. And if anybody's interested in our future of work pieces, it's futureofwork@agilus.ca.
Fantastic. And everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening and for all the amazing questions. We will go through some of the questions because we didn't get to all of them and try and answer them online. But guys, thanks for ever so much for listening. And I'm going to love you all and leave you. Bye for now.